Trench Crusade, as far as I know, is a relatively newish tabletop miniatures game, and it recently had a ridiculously successful crowdfunding campaign. We can take a look at their Kickstarter page right here. Just this portion raised over $3.3 million, and then they went ahead and did a backer kit, what do you call that, late pledge manager thing. Unfortunately, that's no longer available, and I didn't back the game, but more on that in a little bit. However, I believe by my last check, they were over $4 million raised before this whole backer kit thing shut down. And this game calls itself an incredibly blasphemous game. And that's not my words, that's the game developer's words. Take a look at this line right here. Trench Crusade is a tabletop war game set in a blasphemously, I think I got that word right, alternate World War I era created by so-and-so ... And a quick fact check shows this is probably about 99% or more true, but there is at least one notable exception, and that is this monstrosity right here. This is the Pit Locust, and when I saw this miniature in the game, I'm like, I think I know where that is from. Because this guy here is actually pretty darn close to how it is depicted in the Bible. This creature here shows up in the book of Revelation. Now, Revelation is the very last book in the Bible, and what it is a message from Jesus to the Apostle John, who is the author of the Gospel of John. And this occurred sometime in the later half of the 1st century AD, and it's got a couple parts to it. First part is some messages from Jesus to some of the churches. Then you have a series of crazy, trippy visions. Now, some of these things have become part of pop culture. You have things like the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, you have the Beast of Revelation, you have the Mark of the Beast, and of course the number 666. And then the book ends with the final victory of God over Satan. Now, where this guy comes in, the Pit Locust, he shows up in chapter 9. So starting at verse 2, this is the ESV. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like power of the scorpions of the earth. And then to see their appearance, we can jump down here to verse 7. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces, their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. They have tails like stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails. Most notably, you can see the thing that looks like a gold crown over his head. I mean, the face that they have in this particular artistic depiction, it does have human-ish like qualities. It is obviously stretched and distorted quite a bit. And those teeth, despite the fact there's 2 sets of them, do have some aspects that look like a very feline teeth. And of course, metal armor and wings. A lot of the main elements are there. I would argue the scorpion tail is a little bit wrong, but once again, we're in the book of Revelation and you have a lot of creative freedom as to how you want to depict these things, because yeah, anyway, that's good enough. However, there is one interesting note how this creature shows up in the book of Revelation versus how it actually shows up in the game. One of the parts I skipped over was verse 4 here. They, that's a reference to the locust, were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Long story short, this is basically these things were told to attack the enemies of God, which clearly in the context of Trench Crusade, these things are under the concept or control of Satan, attacking who are supposed to be the followers of God. I don't know, maybe the game is doing some serious 4D chess theology, but more likely they're just taking random imagery from various religious texts and just throwing it all into one mass of their own original creation. That's probably a safe bet. However, even this faction does have some more references to the book of Revelation. So down here, this is the basically set of miniatures where the Pit Locust appears, and if I scroll to the top, it's part of the court of the Seven Headed Serpent. To see this, we're going to jump over to chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. So we're going to look at verse 3 first. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. And then we jump down a few more verses here to verse 7. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. That's the dragon I just mentioned a few verses ago. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there is no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, and the deceiver of the whole world, was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. There you can see from chapter 12 here where you get the idea of the seven-headed serpent, the serpent always being connected with Satan, and how that applies, I guess, sort of correctly in Trench Crusade, because I believe the seven-headed serpent court, or whatever what do they call themselves again? Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent are basically the commanders of Hell's armies in this particular game. And while we're here, let's have one other random side tangent back to chapter 9 of the book of Revelation, because you may see a name you're familiar with if you're a tabletop miniature wargaming fan. Here in verse 11, we find out who the leader of these Pit Locusts are. And it says, they have a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon. Now exactly who this Abaddon is a whole theological topic well beyond the scope of this video. But if you do look at what the name Abaddon means in Hebrew, you can quickly find out that there's another famous Abaddon in tabletop wargaming history that probably gets his name from this part of the Bible, or at least this Hebrew name. However, I'm not going to mention it here because that's going to mess up how YouTube distributes videos. Trust me, it's absolutely annoying. Because this video is not about that game. Anyway, while I just very quickly talk about Trench Crusade as a game, I'm not super familiar with it. I didn't back it because a couple of my friends I play games with, they all backed it, and I think they bought pretty much everything that's available to the game. I watched a few battle reports on it. It's got a few interesting mechanics. I mean, most notably, you have this concept of the blood markers, as far as I understand, where when characters get wounded in battle, they're given blood markers. And then your opponents can use these blood markers to go ahead and basically make bad things happen to your characters even worse. So it's kind of a clever way to use damage and just really mess with your opponents. So long story short, whenever this game actually gets released, I probably will play it at some point because, like I said, my friends pretty much bought the entire collection. At the very least, they got the digital files. I'm not sure if they bought it in the plastic miniatures, but you know, one of my friends got like 4 3D printers for printing resin miniatures, so you can crank them out pretty darn fast. I'm sure he probably will. Though it would be fun to go back and look at the Trench Crusade campaign, kind of as a bit of a case study to figure out how were these guys able to be so successful. I have a feeling it may just be because of the names that are attached to it. Let me jump back to the Kickstarter here. You have the game with rules acclaimed by game designer Thomas Pierinin. That entirely may be the reason why this game was so successful, but it'd be fun to dive a little bit more into it and just see exactly how this game came into existence. With that final thought, I want to thank you guys all for watching. I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield, and I will see you all next time.